the latest in our continuing series on webinars. My name is Sharon Ryan. I'm the Assistant Director in the William Patterson Alumni Office. Before I introduce our presenter, I'd like to go over how this webinar will work. First, you'll be able to view the presentation on your computer screen. You will also be able to hear the presentation through your computer's audio system. You can ask questions by typing them in. We will be monitoring them every 10 minutes or so, and Marianne will be answering your questions. Just so you know, too, people have already started emailing us questions, so we have a ready few to start the presentation. Any questions that are not answered in today's presentation, Marianne will be happy to answer. She's done this before and it was a very popular webinar, so if you have any questions that aren't answered, please feel free to email. And now I'd like to introduce today's speaker. Whether the subject is healthcare or movies, women's issues, or trends in television, Marianne Cooper has written about it or spoken about it. Marianne is the author of more than 100 book projects, including Natural Cures for Common Diseases, 101 Ways to Pamper Yourself, and Easy Ways to Lower Your Cholesterol. She has been a syndicated columnist for over 30 years, the editor of a best-selling national entertainment magazine, and a contributing writer for an eclectic group of magazines, including Women's World, Television Week, Grand Magazine, Box Office Magazine, Looking Good Now Magazine, and American Media Special Magazines. Marianne is also the author of Grandeur, The Personal Reflections of Famous Grandparents, a book in which Marianne interviewed celebrity grandparents, including Colin Powell, Tom Hanks, Joe Biden, Martin Sheen, Donny Osmond, and Julie Andrews, who were happy to tell her all about how their grandchildren have brought joy to their lives. Marianne is a proud alumna of WP and graduated with her BA in Speech Arts with a minor in English. She worked as an English teacher before becoming a full-time writer. In today's webinar, Marianne will give you tips on how to get your book or article published. And now, introducing Marianne Cooper, presenting Get Ready to Get Published.
Good afternoon. I have a passion for writing, and it originated when I was 7 years old. And I assume everybody who's online has a passion for writing as well, and I love interacting with people who have a passion for writing. If you see on the screen, this is my very first effort. I was 7 years old, and I had dreams of being a published author even then. So I was quite an entrepreneur. I was into self-publishing even then. I did the illustrations. I did the binding with a red ribbon. And if you look at I even did the typography. If you look on the, I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble here.
Sorry.
Okay, there you go. All right, sorry, a little technical difficulty. You notice that wonderful illustration of Columbus, and I did the typography and the kerning and everything for my own book. And I remember having a very clear memory of, even though I was 7 years old, of looking at this thing and saying, someday I'm going to be published. I was very, very excited about it. And from that, it was something that was inside me that never left me. I spent the rest of my school years and college years being passionate about the fact that someday I was going to be published, and it worked out for me. Even though I could not go to the Columbia School of Journalism, I went to William Patterson. At the time, it was Patterson State, and I used every opportunity while I was here to get as much experience writing as I could. And if it meant being the editor of the Beacon, that's what I did. I got involved with the literary magazine. It's a lesson to be learned that no matter where you go to school, if you have a passion and you're directed towards a certain goal in life, you can take any situation and make it into something. You don't necessarily have to attend so-called elite journalism schools or writing schools. If you have it in you to write, you'll wind up writing and you'll wind up figuring out a path to your goal. I got out into the harsh, cruel world and realized it was very tough to get into publishing. You couldn't get something published without an agent, as probably some of you have already figured out, and you couldn't get an agent without being published. So this is sort of a catch-22. So I decided that what I would do would be to build up my reputation as a writer by getting involved in magazine writing. Magazine writing is a great way to build a portfolio. The niche I chose because it's also very important if you're going to build your reputation in magazine writing to find a little area that no one else is in, or that it's a specialty that you can build on. What I chose was soap opera. It was just it was a fluke, actually. I was pregnant at the time. I was working for uh, a uh, a big publishing house that was doing media packages to newspapers. And the man came to me and he said, my boss, he said, do you know anything about soap opera? And knowing that probably had something to do with a gig of some kind, I said, I know everything about soap opera, and I had never watched a soap opera. He said, okay, so would you like to write a column, newspaper column we're going to distribute nationally on soap opera? I said, absolutely, I will definitely do that. He said, well, the only thing is you have to have the information 3 weeks in advance so we can run it as a recap. So if you can do that, I said, that's no problem whatsoever. And when I called up, and I was very naive, and I spoke to all the three major networks, and I said, can I have that script information 3 weeks in advance? And they all laughed at me, and they said, well, is it, FCC ruling, we can't release this information in advance. I don't know if it was an FCC ruling at the time, but they said, this is suspenseful. These are continuing stories. Why would we give it to you 3 weeks in advance? And every week I would call and do the same thing. I would talk to the same people, and they would say, why are you calling back? But I knew this was my ticket to become a writer and have some kind of reputation and platform, which we'll talk about in a minute. And so I just kept at it. And one week, the regular person who was at ABC that I would speak to every week, very nice lady who would turn me down every week, she went on vacation for 3 weeks, and she was replaced by a guy in the sports department. And when I got him on the phone and I said, I would like this information, and he said, oh, sure, I got it right here. You want me to read it to you over the phone? Once I had ABC's information, I went to NBC and CBS and repeated the conversation, and they said, well, we better get on board too. By the time the woman got back from her 3 week vacation, I had already had a column, and there was no taking it back. So that's basically how I started. I had kind of revolutionized the soap opera industry because no one else had ever done this before. Um, Getting a chance to do a syndicated column on soaps, I learned that the one way to get published, the one ingredient that you need to get published, is to create a platform for yourself. Platforms are very important in terms of um, uh, going to a publisher. And you go to a publisher and they ask you a few questions. They have very limited budget. They really don't do a great job of promoting these days, and they don't really sell your book that well. When you create an outline that you send in to say, I want to write this book for you, a book proposal, part of the proposal has to be your platform. Your platform is, why are you the person to be able to write these books and not somebody else? What gives you that special talent? And so what happens is that by having a background in soaps, that got me into the uh, book industry. I worked for a company called Soaps and Cereals Pioneer Books. They gave me 108 book projects to work on, and that's how I got my background in publishing. And once you've published once, then it's very easy to keep publishing. You go and you say, now my platform includes the fact that I've published all these books. And they say, okay, we'll take a chance on you. If you don't have that specificity in terms of, I'm the right person to do, I'm talented enough to write the book, but beyond that, I can go out and promote the book because I have a reputation in this industry or for this topic, and I have a platform. And it doesn't have to be a magazine. It can be a blog. It can be that you created your own website and you have a mailing list. Whatever it is that you can bring to the table to demonstrate to the publisher that you're going to do all the heavy lifting in terms of promotion. That's what they want to hear. As I said, budgets now in terms of book publishing, in terms of public relations and marketing, they're cut to the bone. So print publishing is really on the ropes in terms of that. But it is possible. It is possible. When I when soaps began to decline, I said, well, we went from 13 soaps down to 4 soaps. I said, I've got to find another niche. And I decided, well, celebrity grandparents. Now, there's a niche. And I just so happened I hooked up with a company that created the Grand magazine. It was a magazine for grandparents, and they had been doing generic covers of without any kind of celebrity involvement. And I pitched them the idea that if you can get celebrity grandparents on the cover, then you would probably have a more successful book. And so what happened at that point was there were many, many obstacles to that, just as there were many obstacles to soap, but I was able to overcome them. The biggest obstacle is most celebrities are very age conscious and they don't want to talk about the fact that they are grandparents. It's a big age issue for them. Susan Lucci for years had a no grandmother clause in her contract on All My Children, that she never wanted to be a grandmother on the show. She overcame that eventually because she was getting older and older, and eventually she had to drop that request. But so I targeted grandparents, but I had to keep in mind that the other thing I had to overcome was a lot of celebrity grandparents don't want to show the faces of their grandchildren for security reasons. But despite that, I got many, many grandparents to talk to me. Colin Powell, this is a side of him that you'll never see. And when we went to photograph him with his grandchildren, the grandchildren were squirmy on his lap. He was holding on to both of them for dear life. My daughter was taking the cover photo for this issue. And at one point, she was snapping away, and she got so frustrated because the kids were squirming. She lifted her head up and took a deep breath, and all she heard was this growl coming from Colin Powell saying, "Keep shooting." And I said to Meredith, my daughter, I said, well, when the general says keep shooting, you absolutely have to keep shooting. So that's how we got that shot. But, I went on to spent the afternoon with Martin Sheen in Malibu, and he was a lovely person, talked about his folks, his grandchildren, and also Nancy Pelosi. Who I asked her, who would you like to spend cross country sitting next to on a plane? And she said, anybody who will listen to stories about my grandchildren. But probably the most exciting one that I interviewed was Joe Biden just before he was elected vice president of the United States. I had been asking for that for a very long time. I wanted to get access to him. I couldn't get access to him. And finally, one afternoon, someone called me from his office and said, listen, you got the interview. And I said, okay, when's the date? Tell me where to show up, or if he's going to do it over the phone. They said, no, you're going to do it in 10 minutes. And I said, I can't do it. I can't do it right now. I don't have my tape recorder set up. I don't have anything ready to go. And they just didn't even listen to me. And they said, in 10 minutes, he's giving a speech in Atlanta. In 10 minutes, he's going to walk off the stage. And when he does, he's going to walk to a limousine, and somebody's going to hand him a cell phone, and then you're on. So I started hooking up the machine and hanging up the phone. And at the time, I turned on CNN, and I'm watching him make this speech on the stage, scrambling to put everything together in time. And I said to myself, well, he talks and talks and talks. He's such a blowhard when it comes to making speeches. I probably have a little more than 10 minutes. Well, just as I'm thinking that, I hear, and God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. And I thought, oh my God, that's the end of the speech. I see him, I'm kind of paralyzed. I see him walking down the steps of the stage. I see him walking towards the limousine. I see a guy coming out of the left-hand screen, and he's running like a rally runner, and he's handing off a phone to him. At the very moment he puts the phone to his ear, my phone starts to ring. And I'm looking transfixed at the screen, looking at my phone ringing. And for a moment, I just said, whoa, this is so cool. This is really cool. But I still had no questions to ask him because I hadn't prepared. But I got out of that the way I've always been able to get through interviews with celebrity grandparents. The first question always is, tell me about your grandchildren. Well, 20 minutes later, I had a chance to ask my second question, so I had an opportunity to compose myself. Take a look at this. We talked about Nancy Pelosi. Take a look at this. Now, from the platform that I built at Grand Magazine, Grand decided that they were going to take my interviews and publish them in a book. And they published the book called Grandeur, Personal Reflections of Famous Grandparents, 19 interviews that I had done. And they sent it to a company called The Book Patch. Now, if you remember nothing else about this seminar, please remember thebookpatch.com. I don't own it. I don't get a piece of it. I have no vested interest in it. But they are a remarkable self-publishing site. It was created by a best-selling author. He'll read all about his story if you go there, who was kind of fed up with the publishing world and fed up with self-publishing options. And he's created this site. Now, this book, Grandeur, I defy you, if you picked it up and looked at it, looks no different than anything that's on a bookshelf in a store. But he creates these things. And in the old days, when you used to do self-publishing, you'd have to buy a couple of thousand books and kind of put them in your garage and hope to sell them. So it was a big investment of space and money. The book patch will take your PDF, which I'll talk about in a minute. Take the PDF, take your design cover that you design, and they'll turn it into a book for you, and they will sell you one single copy if that's what you want. So in essence, and I always say this, and people think this is crazy, but it's true, you can be a published author for $5 because that's basically what it's going to cost you to get them to produce the book for you. Not only that, they will put your book in their bookstore, and they will fulfill your book and send you a check. So if you really feel that you have something that you can write and promote, and you want to take the plunge into self-publishing, it'll take you exactly a $5 investment to make that happen. Now, one of the people who wrote in previously talked about poetry. Poetry is a very tough sell for publishers, but published by doing it self-publishing and then going to LinkedIn or to Facebook and getting yourself enrolled as members of different discussion groups about poetry, you can promote your own book, you can sell your own book, and they can go straight to the book patch and order the book. And it doesn't cost anything more. You don't have to keep anything on hand. Everything is taken care of for you. But I will be very honest with you. Poetry is a really, really, really tough sell to go to publishers with. I don't see many poetry books coming out. It's just not something that they invest too much resource into. But that doesn't mean that you can't do it. It doesn't mean that you can't publish it yourself and interest a poetry class in using it as a textbook. There are many, 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 many options for people who want to put together poetry books. And it starts with a place, and it might be other places, but just the place I know, which is the book patch. The same goes, yes.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
I don't know if you know this place either, but do you know Create Space? Someone wants to know about, can you comment on Create Space for self-publishing?
Yeah, Create Space is tied into Amazon, as I recall. And that's a fine place. It's a little more complicated and a little less user-friendly than the book patch, which actually, if you go to the book patch, it also has a place where they create templates that you just fill as you're writing. So you don't even have to really worry about working in Word or working in PDFs or whatever. They provide all those tools for you. So, and Create Space does not have its own bookstore. It works with Amazon, and there's certain restrictions about putting things in Amazon in terms of memberships. You have to be a certain class member of Amazon in order to get that done. And the percentage they take a huge percentage, whereas the book patch only takes back the cost of them producing the book. So whereas on Create Space, you're going through Amazon, you might put a book out there and you charge $20 for it. They may take $8 or $10 of that. I'm not sure what their percentage is right now. For the book patch, they'll take $5 that they took to produce it. They'll charge the person who buys it the shipping and handling, which is normal cost, not jacked up cost, but normal cost. And they send you a check for the balance. So I would, you have to, if it's very important for you to be on Amazon, be part of that group and not Barnes and Noble or someplace else that you might be able to put your book, then Create Space might be the thing. But the trade-off is I think their commissions are pretty high.
And Book Patch was the one for $5, right?
Yeah, make sure you put the in front of it. Thebookpatch.com. And definitely you should. The guy who created it was a best-selling author. He was a member of the Mossad in Israel, and he did all his adventures as being a Mossad agent. And as I said, I've talked to him many, many times, and he just is constantly bringing more things to the fore in terms of improving the site. It's never just stable. It's always adding more and more and more things. He really is amazing. Now let me talk about children's books for a minute before I go forward. Children's books there's a glut in the market on children's books. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't get involved with children's books. The other part about it is someone wrote in and they said, how do I choose an editor for it and submit it to them? I know it needs to be professionally edited before I could submit the manuscript to a publisher. What you have to understand about submitting manuscripts to publishers is whatever you're submitting is going to be heavily edited by them. They have their own crew of editors and proofreaders and copy editors, and they're going to tear the thing apart. So you're not going to send something in and it's going to be bulletproof. If you're reasonably certain, rather than spend time or expense on an outside editor to do this, unless you have a partner who's an editor who want just another set of eyes. But I think if you're reasonably sure that your stuff is pretty good, then I would let someone I trust read it, and then I would go with it. And the other part about it is, even if you're not a great illustrator, if you do illustrations that are okay, that convey the message, they don't have to be perfect either, because in all likelihood, if the publisher likes your book, he's going to wind up assigning an illustrator to it. But here's the thing about publishing books, and I keep coming back to Book Patch and self-publishing, because if you send a manuscript into a publisher, and even the ones that are agented now, they wind up on a big pile. And somebody sorts through that pile, and it's kind of tedious. And a lot of them get rejected without really giving it much. But presentation is everything. If you send in something like what's on the screen in front of us now, a book like that to a publisher, the publisher is going to take a second look at it, because psychologically, it's real to them. It's actually something they can imagine in terms of being in their stable of books. So I would say, even if you're a book publisher, a children's book author, and you're not that strong on illustration, or the book isn't illustrated, get it into a form where, as I said, it's a $5 investment where you can get it into form where you can have a glossy, beautiful book. It comes in variety of sizes, just 6x9. You can do 8.5x11. You can do a digest size. There's all different sizes. And the investment is so small to be able to send that out as opposed to a manuscript or as opposed to a digital copy, which I think also gets lost. And it makes your book stand out. That's what I think. Let me go on to the next. Okay, traditional publishing. This is a pretty good chart as to how publishing works. Okay, traditional publishing up to this point has been the only game in town, and people have been discouraged from going into self-publishing because of the cost prohibition and the fact that digital publishing is another thing that's coming to the fore, and print on demand. Self-publishing is, in fact, low cost and can feed print on demand. So once you self-publish, you can go and get print on demand. Print on demand simply means that you print one book at a time, and you only print the copies that you need. There are other companies now, once you get a PDF together, that you can send it to them and they will print it on demand for you. But then you have to estimate, if I'm going to a book fair and I'm going to sell books, do I need 100 copies? Do I need 50 copies? So it is going to be an investment. It's not a big investment the way it used to be, but it's going to be a little bit of investment, because you just like planning a party. You have to estimate, how many guests you're going to have and how much you're going to spend. Digital publishing is easy. You take your PDF and you upload it. you can get onto the Amazon Marketplace as a digital publisher. That you don't need to go through Creative Space or anything. There's a form to fill out. Amazon doesn't really take anything for digital publishing in terms of profits out of it. You're allowed to have that platform. And there's a way, as you advertise your digital publishing, that you can redirect people to a hard copy of the same book. Okay? So that's the sort of wheelhouse that you get with traditional publishing. There's professionals, an expert team, there's contracts, there's distribution, all these wonderful things. But it's hard to get into that door. If you try to go in through the back way through self-publishing, you're probably better off. Also, digital publishing will afford you the same kind of advantage. Okay? Now, I think there was another question. Let me take a look. I have a blog. Okay. This person has a blog and many journals loaded with poetry. Oh, this is the poetry person. Let me recommend this to you, the poetry person. I don't want to discourage you in terms of poetry, but if you do have a blog and you have many journals loaded with poetry, okay, create your own mailing list. Self-publish and market to your mailing list. So the fact that you have a blog is wonderful. And you may indeed take a shot at a publisher and say, I've got a blog, as long as you can say, I have so many people that come and look at my blog. And if it's an impressive enough mailing list, a publisher may take a chance on you. But if they don't, just continue to create a mailing list. Keep building it in any way you can. Have a Facebook page if you don't have one already that points to the blog. Facebook is a wonderful thing. Join LinkedIn. There are probably poetry associations on LinkedIn, and become a member of that. And you're allowed to post things once you become a member of a particular group. Some of the groups are 10, 20,000 on LinkedIn. They're huge. So do the best you can to create a platform for yourself in terms of the audience that you can bring to the book. And even if you don't get a publisher, you can wind up marketing it yourself, which would not be very difficult for you.
Can I ask you another question?
Sure.
And a lot of questions. Do you have any tips for getting a memoir published?
Oh, okay. A memoir. I've been doing the last few projects that I did were memoirs. And I just did a memoir of a Holocaust survivor. And he's 90 years old, and his wife hired me as a birthday present to him because every year he would go to Europe and he'd be on this special program where they walk of life, where they take people on a tour of camps, and he would talk about his experience. And the last thing he said to his mother, before his mother was taken away and killed, she said to him, make sure you get out of here, get to America, and tell everybody what they did to us. So he's devoted his whole life to doing lecture series and things like that. So they hired me to do a memoir. Now the memoir, which we finished, was self-published by the Book Patch. It went to the Holocaust Museum. Now it's a featured book at the Holocaust Museum. And he is talking to publishers who we've sent them to, who we sent the copies of the book to see if they can pick it up and publish it and carry distribution for it. But he continues to go and do group lectures all around to different schools and universities. He did one here about 6 months ago at William Patterson. So the memoir, unless you're a very famous person, is a very tough road to hoe, unless you have a very compelling story. If you were a survivor of 9/11, you were in the building and you wanted to write your memoir, I'm sure you can find a publisher. But what you may think is very important about your life may not be very important to a publisher. So again, I would create a blog. I would sign up to give lectures in libraries and schools, and I would tell my story there, and then create a book, and that's how I would do that. You might want to try to think about your life in terms of tying it into something very important that happened. So you're sort of the Forrest Gump of the situation. You don't necessarily have to be involved, but just as an observer of something, and with your reflections as to why you're an important element in that story. And if you wanted to do it that way, you could do it that way. Or I might say this to you. I might say, put the memoir aside, write something else so you can establish yourself as a published author. And then, secondly, write the memoir. It doesn't have to go necessarily in that order. Okay, so now when you're putting together a book, I think I answered. I don't think there's any other questions that I left out. Let me just see.
More.
Oh, you do? Okay. Well,
Would you like some more questions?
Yes, I love more questions.
Okay. I'm just going to read this off here. I'm working on a Christian book, sort of like a Braveheart meets Harry Potter. If Harry were a Christian, big smile. Some self-publishers will contact me, but don't feel comfortable sending out chapters in advance. Do you have any thoughts on that?
What, sending out chapters in advance?
Yes.
Okay. A publisher has to see a sample of your writing. So you'd almost have to send out, most with nonfiction, you have to send the whole book. With fiction, you need a couple of chapters to send to them. There are some very, very good Christian book publishers. If you're not aware of them, go to the writersmarket.com, writersdigest.com, writersmarket.com, and they have a list of people who specialize in Christian books. And that might be your best bet. And you know what? That's probably an easier market to crack than any other market. So I would encourage you to go straight to a publisher with that, only because I think that it's a niche that you probably would have some success going to a publisher. But you need to at least be comfortable enough. It doesn't have to be chapters 1 and 2. It could be chapter, the most important chapter or the most action, or, just one chapter and then chapter 1 and chapter 4. It doesn't have to, but it just needs to be a substantial writing sample so they can judge how much work they're looking to see. How much do we have to massage and change what we're being sent? Because we know we're going to have to change some things and we're going to have to refine it and edit it. So this is what they're looking to do.
So you recommend going straight to a publisher rather than
and I would look, as I would say, I would say Google Christian publishers, because there's a ton of them. It's not a lot of money for Christian publishers. They don't give much of an advance, but they do give somewhat of an advance. And you could probably connect with them, and they would give you an idea of what they needed to do. There is another question I had in front of me here, which was, do you need to go to an attorney before signing a contract with a self-publishing company? The company I'm thinking of signing with is Mill City Press, which I'm not familiar with. I've downloaded their contract from their website. I'm a little leery of self-publishing companies sending you contracts. I'm not sure why it's necessary. It's a pretty straightforward agreement, as I said before, unless they're offering services that other self-publishers aren't. If they're agreeing to market it, they're agreeing to put it in stores, it might be that the contract is more for your protection in terms of handing over your material. But it sounds like this self-publisher, unless I'm reading it wrong, is looking for a check from you. Very often, people say, pay us a certain amount of money and we'll publish your book for you. I would be very wary of that. I'd be very, very wary of that. Just as I'd be very wary of somebody who says, send me your manuscript for X amount of dollars and I'll evaluate it for you. You should never have to have an agent charge you anything. The agent shouldn't charge you a dime. The agent should be making money off commissions. So if an agent, you're approached by an agent who says, yeah, send me $500 and I'll put you on my roster and evaluate the book, run away, because it's a scam. Okay? Now, so this is where you begin. In terms of, I've taken this from a variety of different sources. I keep mentioning the Book Patch. You must think I own the company, but it's just the one I'm most familiar with. But there are many other different companies that do the same thing. You create an instance of your book by providing the book title, size, binding, categories, and ink. They'll say, what's the size of your book? What's the title of your book? Do you want it perfect bound? A perfect bound, you've seen it's actually a book binding is perfect bound, but some people have binding which is like a stapled binding, and they, whether it's hardcover or whether it's a cloth cover, that's what they call cloth cover, or whether it's paperback, whether it's going to have color inside, which is very expensive, or just color cover, which is pretty standard. Okay, you upload the interior of your book as a PDF. It's very, very simple. Once you create your book in Word, in a word processing program, it's one click to upload the text into a PDF so that it becomes a book form. Most sites have their own little piece of software that you can download that will you just be able to use their software to convert your text. If not, most Word programs have that as an option anyway, so that's not an issue. The cover design. Uh, you need a high-res photo or artwork. You can use their wizard to create one instead if you don't have any of that. And that at that point you can place your book in their no-fee bookstore, because there are no fees normally to any of these bookstores that exist on self-publishing um, marketplaces. They only take the cost of the book. So you can order one book, and I recommend you order one copy first to proof it, so that you know that before you place a larger order, you've gotten all the bugs out of it. Because sometimes the color doesn't translate, and something comes out a little orange on the cover, and you want to adjust that. So just order the one book. And if the one book is fine, then go ahead. If not, you reload whatever you have to reload and start again. But think about it. What happens is when you all of a sudden get that book in the mail and it's published, it's perfect bound, it's published, it's beautiful, it looks like it could sit on the shelf at Barnes and Noble, and what a feeling of exhilaration and a sense of accomplishment. If you never did anything else, you'd have that book on your shelf to say, at least I accomplished that. There's very handy dandy book calculator, so you'll know exactly what your printing cost is. And here's a 6x9 book, which is what's called trade size paperback, which are where most bookstores do. Perfect bound, color cover, black and white inside, which is pretty standard. A 150-page book, which is a pretty good sized book, and it'll cost you $4.44 plus, I guess, a couple of dollars for shipping, and that's about it. So that's the easy part of that. And then you take the book and you put it in their bookstore. So now you see they charge $12.95. You decide what you're going to charge. $12.95 for that book, and it costs $4.44, let's say, to or $5 to produce. They'll send you a check for the difference, and they'll take care of the shipping and all that. You can put the book synopsis in, and give different images, and you're in a bookstore. And you have a place for customer comments. So when the person reads the book, they will add a comment. You'll get beautiful feedback from people. Some, if they're unhappy, they'll tell you. But if they're happy, most of the time people leave comments when they're happy when it comes to book sales. So that's a really gratification too, because some people are reading it and liking it. So there is the print on demand. This is how it goes. 4 simple steps. Thebookpatch.com is where I go, but if you want to go to CreateSpace or any other places, I think Yahoo does something. Check them all out and find out what works for you.
Marianne?
Yes.
2 questions.
Yes.
Someone wants to know about ISBN numbers. Should we get them from BookPatch?
Well, yes. One of the improvements, I guess about a year ago, that BookPatch provided, and I think other places do too, is that they will, for a $25 package, they will get you your ISBN number and create your little zebra graphic that you can upload right on the back cover of your book. So you don't have to worry about that at all. The only thing you might want to do is look into registering your book with the Library of Congress. You go on the Library of Congress site, It'll give you a place to do that once the book is published. And you can go to Washington, D.C., walk into the Library of Congress and say, can I have a listing of the book written by, and give your name, and this clerk will print something out with the Library of Congress stamp on it and hand it to you. And that's if you sell one book or if you sell 1,000,000 books. If you're registered with the Library of Congress, your book will be on the shelf in the Library of Congress.
That's so cool. Another question, just when you mentioned that you wrote or co-wrote that memoir, when you do something like that, let's say maybe some people in here might be interested in helping someone else write a book. When you do that and it sells, it's $4.44 plus shipping, do you get a flat fee to co-write that book or write that book for the person? Or
for me?
Yeah.
But yeah, the wife who hired me, she paid me a flat fee. She put me on the retainer for a year to finish it. And, I can go in and order the books very inexpensively. Like, that's the other thing I wanted to mention. If you're an author and you have an account with a self-publisher like that, they will show you a different screen. When you go to the bookstore, it'll show $4.44, and you can order 100 at $4.44. They don't show the retail price. The retail price is only for new customers coming in. Yeah, it's a really nice thing, and it doesn't even have to be memoirs. It can be cookbooks. It can be poetry books. It can be picture books. It can be anything. It can be like somebody wanted to do something. Like I worked with a guy by the name of Mel Weiss. Mel Weiss was the class action king in the 60s and 70s. And then he went to jail because he ran afoul of what he was doing. Anyway, so he wanted to write a book of his memoirs to redeem himself. So I spent the last year writing his book. Now, his name will appear on the cover. My name will appear in very small print that says, editor or something like that in the book. And, he's shopping it to a publisher right now. Now, because he's Mel Weiss and he has a big name, he's not going to have any problem taking that book and bringing it to publish. If you're Snooky from Jersey Shore, or if you're Honey Boo Boo, you're going to get a book. That's just the nature of things. People in publishing houses have very limited funds now these days because of the digital age. They just want to bank on big names. So if you can attach yourself to a big name or a big organization, then you have a better chance of walking in the door and getting yourself published right off the bat.
I have another question, and I promise I won't. Someone wants to know, can you speak a little bit more about children's market? You said, should you not concentrate on that market? What's your recommendation?
Okay.
I mean, it's your recommendation.
The children's book market, again, you have to establish a platform. I would join every children's book homeschooling group. Anything I could think of, I would join. Create a blog. Create a massive mailing list for yourself of people who might be interested in your book. And then when you write your book proposal, you send in a chapter or two. And even if it's not that greatly illustrated, if you have illustrations, it doesn't really matter because they're going to hire somebody to illustrate your book in all likelihood. But if you create the platform and say, I'm ready to go out and push the book, I'll go to book fairs, I've already done this and that and the other thing, and I've got a huge mailing list, the chances are you might get a shot. But you have to be new and original. For instance, a friend of mine was divorced, and she had a little girl. And she said, I'm very frustrated going to bookstores because there are very few books that are mother-daughter books and that don't include a father. And she said, you know what? This is like depressing for my daughter. If I go out and get her these little smiley, happy books with the good nuclear family and the father's always around, she said, there's no really great books for that particular group of people or demographic. Probably also, two fathers or two mothers or mixed families. Anything you can find that's a little bit unusual, look in the marketplace and see what's there and see what need you can fill. Because the children's marketplace is very competitive, but they will jump on something that's very, very different and fills a need that nobody thought of before. So it depends how creative you can be in the children's marketplace. But I might try self-publishing for children's books because I see people, I go to fairs and a woman has her own book. Oh, okay. If anybody out there also, I just thought of this.
Mhm.
If anybody out there is an NJEA member, is a teacher, the November convention is going to have something called Authors Alley. And it's going to be a section of the convention, which, by the way, attracts 50,000 people. It's going to be a section where people can bring their books, their children's books or whatever kind of books they wrote. They'll have a table. The table costs $50, and you can display and sell market your book to either other publishers who might be there, or also you can sell them right from your table to people who might want to buy them. Or you can create a mailing list by having people sign up, maybe create a newsletter for them. But Authors Alley at the NJEA convention in Atlantic City, the first weekend in November, when the people have off, the teachers' convention weekend, would be a great place for an NJEA member to push a book. And if you're not the NJEA member and you have a friend who's an NJEA member, take them with you, let them buy the booth and publish your book, and market your book for you. So that's something that is a great opportunity, I think, with 50,000 people walking around. That's a great opportunity to expose a book.
There's even more questions, but go ahead, Marianne.
Okay, okay, we took care of that. All right, so if we look at this, Create Space, I told you there's other people out there. This is what Create Space talks about. It says create for free, distribute book for free, but also if you're going to put it on Amazon, which is the way they work, Amazon's going to want a commission. So that you have to read the fine print with Create Space. There's Kindle Direct Publishing, and that's just entirely online publishing. That is not print at all. But again, earn royalties up to 70%, and that tells you right there that somebody else is getting 30%. Okay, the big thing with book publishing, one of the things that's very frustrating, if you do get a publisher, and the publisher said, I'll take care of the marketing and all that, whatever, here's your advance. In all likelihood, unless you got a great publisher who's very aggressive and can spend the time on your book, you're going to get your advance, but you're never going to make $1 million on your book. And not that you could make $1 million on your book, but beyond getting a royalty, you really have to be aggressive if your book is out there on social media. There are so many places that you can join groups or put your book or advertise your book. Even if you have a Facebook page, there are author pages on Facebook. When you click off and create a new page on Facebook, there's something called author pages. And that would be where you would put your book. And then for as little as $50 a month or $25 a month, you can do Google ads and you can attract thousands of people to your book through Google and Facebook ads, because Facebook does that as well. So, but you have to be very attuned to the fact that you're not going to sit back and let the checks roll in. You have to be aggressively part of it. You may have to go on a book tour if the publisher wants you to, but even in lieu of that, you need to be doing everything you can to promote your book in the small window of opportunity of when it's first published. Because once it becomes a year old or so, then all the promotion dries up from even the best publishing house. So you have to pay attention to the social media landscape once you get it out there, whether as a self-published book or as a published book. And these are all the possibilities for that. And here we are. We've come full circle.
Oh my God, there's so many questions, Marianne.
Okay, so we'll leave that on the screen, but this is where I began, with famous people. And I also wound up with famous people, with grandeur. But it just shows you whether you want to do a cookbook, a memoir, or whatever. There's never been a better time to be published, whether you publish yourself or whether you have somebody else publish for you. My dream started when I was 7. I found a way to achieve it. The more I talk about my self-publishing experience, the more my friends and family are hooked as well. My daughter is writing her children's book. We talked about that. She always dreamed of having published, and she'll have it published. My friend Marlene, a fabulous cook, is penning a cookbook of her favorite chicken recipes. Self-publishing has gone mainstream, and jump in, the water's fine. Now,
Okay. I don't think we're going to get to all these questions.
well, let's
see.
We'll do rapid response.
We literally have 9 minutes. So
Okay.
Here we go.
Rapid response.
This person is a visual artist. This person is very determined, okay? Believes her book is very innovative. 2 questions. When she finishes her book, does she need to specify on the book what age group it's for?
If it's a children's book, yeah, absolutely, because that sends them to the right category. Every publishing house has different age groups that they are interested in, and there are different editors attached to each age group because it's a real specialty. It can be a wide range. It doesn't have to be a narrow range, but she does have to really give them some direction as to where this book, because they're thinking of marketing to schools too, perhaps. So she needs to really assign that.
Okay. And besides using digital advertising like Facebook and websites, what other ways can she promote her book? Would big name bookstores take a self-published book and put it on their shelf?
No, they would not.
Okay.
Even little bookstores. There's something called Books and Greetings. They won't take self-published books. The best way to promote it is to look to see if there are any book fairs in your area. There's book fairs that run a few times a year, and they open up to self-publishers or small run books, and they give you an opportunity to display your wares.
Okay, how about sports books? What do you think the market's like for sports books?
Sports books are depending upon the sport, and there's a problem with sports books. If maybe he could or she could clarify. Are we talking about a specific team, or are we talking about a sport in general? Are we talking baseball, or are we talking Yankee baseball? Because if we're talking a specific team, then there's a whole licensing thing that you have to get involved in to be able to do those books.
Okay. They did not specify. Maybe
Okay.
if they want to write in, we can answer.
Yeah, I can definitely answer. Okay. But sports books, as long as
Oh, biography.
Oh, sports biographies. Okay. Is it going to be an unauthorized biography or an authorized biography? That's different too. Because an unauthorized biography, you leave yourself open to the celebrity, whoever you're writing the bio about, being very upset with you, and maybe even doing cease and desist. If it's authorized, you have to write and get permission to write the book about them. Now, the better way to go is not do a singular person.
Authorized.
It's authorized. Okay.
Deceased.
Okay. It is authorized?
Authorized, and it's a deceased person.
Oh, okay. So the authorization came from the family? I don't know.
Let's just say.
In other words, you have a written authorization, especially because the person's dead.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Then I think that person should go straight to a publisher. If it's a person who's pretty famous and the publisher would recognize, I'd get my platform together quickly. I would get my outline together quickly and go. Because that's the one time you can go to a publisher and be or an agent and get your stuff seen by the right people.
Okay. Here we go. We talked about the metadata and the ISBNs and stuff. Okay, this person actually, I guess, went to the site while on here.
Yeah.
So there's a premium package, $50, had metadata and barcode image with retail price option. You get no barcode, but with the $25 package, do you have to keep buying packages depending on how many books you publish?
Yeah, because every ISBN number is unique.
Okay.
So therefore, that's what we're talking about. The ISBN number is unique and is a stamp, and it's a stamp you have to buy for your book. Now, you can sell books without an ISBN number too. If you're self-publishing and you don't intend to put them in stores, you just intend to bring them to fairs and do lectures or whatever, there's no reason to have an ISBN number. And there's no reason to have an ISBN number if you intend to take this and send it to a publisher, because they'll assign an ISBN number. But if you're trying to actually get the book into stores and sell them that way, then you need an ISBN number.
Okay. I'm putting 2 questions together.
Sure.
Because I think I know the answer. Can you self-publish a children's book? I think the answer is
yes, absolutely.
Okay. And what are the legalities as far as copywriting and such when you're self-publishing?
Okay. There's what they call poor man's copyright. And poor man's copyright is once you write it and you declare it, it's automatically covered under copyright law. And then you use a symbol inside your book and say, I'm copyrighted. Now, if you're a little bit skittish about that, you can go to the copyright website, to look it up, Google copyright law, and it'll be more specific if there's something in your book that you feel needs additional protection. But for most people, for what they write, just to declare copyright is copyright.
Okay. So here's another question that's it's long, but it might be the last one.
Sure.
Okay. This person designed the content of their book,
Mm-hmm.
proposed book, and it's going to be a compilation of quotations about books. Okay. Each quote's designed in calligraphy, it's in color. Okay, it's a very...
Yeah.
So she went to publishers, but on their sites they say only go through literary agents, for example, Penguin, Sterling. How can I get out the literary agent?
You want a literary agent. How do you get a literary agent?
How should I proceed?
Okay. Writer's
and also,
market.
I'm going to add this on. In academia, self-publishing, they said, is the vanity press.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so they used to call it vanity press. And
Okay.
the reason why they call it vanity press is because you spent a fortune just for your own ego. This is self-publishing is a little different. Okay. So it's not vanity press per se because of that. Okay. But in terms of finding an agent, the best way to find an agent is to go to Writer's Market and Writer's Digest, and it has a volume which is available online called Literary Agencies. I think that's what it's called, Literary Agents. And it will list agents, and the agents will be listed alphabetically, and it'll say, I'm interested in this genre, and I will take unsolicited manuscripts. Or if they won't, they say they won't. But if you comb through enough of them, there's enough that will say either they're a new business just starting up or they're looking for new clients, and they'll say, we'll take stuff. But you have to go to the literary marketplace. That's what it's called, literary marketplace, and it's a book put out by Writer's Digest.
Okay. There are still questions, but we are heading into 1:00, and there will be no time to answer the rest.
No more answer. Okay.
I think that there's so many. So any questions that, if you still want to type in questions, because I see so many more coming in, I will have Marianne look at them, and she'll happily, I think, answer your questions.
Absolutely.
We will send out the questions and answers to everybody, so you'll have them, and we will also send you a PDF of this presentation, as well as the fact that we have a YouTube channel, the William Patterson Alumni, and we have been recording this, so we will put this up on our YouTube channel. So if there's anything that you didn't get, you want to go back and re-listen. So right now, I just really want to thank Marianne for her great presentation. Thank you all for coming. It's been really interesting. It probably could go on for another hour.
Now go home and write your book.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Go home and write your book.
I hope I've given you some kind of encouragement and passion to go do the thing. Do the thing that you've been putting off because you say, oh, I can't do it because nobody's going to look at it or I'm never going to get it published. Do it today.
And thank you all. So hope we'll see you next time.